Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Han, I'm a hand embroidery artist, and this video is going to be a super beginner friendly tutorial on how to embroider these florals onto the front of a jean pocket. I recently did my first poll on my channel and a bunch of you requested that I film a jean embroidery tutorial with cats and florals. Don't worry, that is in the works, but in the meantime, I thought I would share this super beginner friendly tutorial with you guys. If you've watched my tutorials before, you know the deal. I'm going to run you through all of the supplies you need to complete this project, and as always, they'll be linked in the description of this video. First up, you're going to need some embroidery needles. As always, you can use any kind of embroidery needles for this project. I like these needles, they don't have a brand name and they're about $4 on Amazon. Next up, you need a pair of scissors. You can just use any old scissors you have lying around. I like super small sharp scissors so I can get really close to the thread that I'm trimming, but yeah, you can just use any that you have at home. Next up is something you probably don't have at home. These finger protectors are a must. Denim fabric is a slightly thicker material to embroider and it can cause you a bit of discomfort on your fingertips if you don't use finger protectors when you're embroidering denim. Next, you'll need an embroidery hoop. This is just a 3-inch embroidery hoop and it's the perfect size for a jean pocket embroidery project. Next up, you'll need some embroidery thread. I usually pop this onto some clothing pegs. Makes it really easy to store embroidery thread and it looks kind of aesthetic, but today I just didn't have time. I hopped right into this tutorial. And obviously you'll be needing a pair of jeans. I recommend thicker, non-stretchy denim. So I'm thinking more like mom jeans rather than skinny jeans, since skinny jeans have quite a lot of elastic in them to keep them really tight against your legs. And lastly, you're going to need something to draw the design onto your jeans. I love this disappearing embroidery marker. I use the blue side since it disappears when it comes into contact with water. If you do have access to an inkjet printer and water-soluble Fabry-Solvy paper, you can just print out a design, peel it off the sticky paper and stick it onto your jeans. But I know not everybody has access to this kind of equipment, so I'm going to show you the old-fashioned sketching out method instead. I want this design to border the pocket. I'm going for spring vibes, so I'm going to embroider some daisies and some roses onto these jeans. So I'm just going to go in with my Dritz marker and mark out some rough sketches of where I want the flowers to be. Again, this marker is super forgiving, so these sketches don't have to be the final thing that you embroider onto these jeans. They can kind of just work as markers for where you want the flowers to be and the kind of vibes that you're going for. I'm going to be doing 4 separate flowers, but they're going to be 2 of the same flowers, so 2 daisies, 2 roses, in a line underneath the hem of the pocket. You'll see I've just marked out the center of where I want the daisy flowers to be. Later, I'm actually going to go in and add some petals. It's just another reason why I love this method of sketching out onto the fabric that you're going to be embroidering onto, because you can really change it and mix it up as you go. So I'm going to be embroidering the flowers towards the top of the pocket first, and I'm just going to pop my embroidery hoop on. You want to make sure that the fabric inside the hoop is quite taut. If it's flopping about in there and it's creasing, it means you haven't put the hoop on properly. The fabric should sit really flat and taut when it's inside the hoop. I'm going to start off with this green thread to stitch all of the stems of the flowers. Embroidery thread like this comes in one thick strand made up of 6 tiny smaller strands, and we're going to split away 3 of these strands to embroider everything in this design today. So all of the thread colors you see me using, I'm using 3 strands of every single one of them. This is the key to dainty, neat looking stitches. Once you have your thread split away, thread it onto your needle and knot the opposite end of the thread twice to make sure it doesn't travel through the fabric when you make your initial stitch. It's almost time to start stitching, but first, don't forget your finger protectors. I'm not joking, these are absolute lifesavers, and they will make the project so much more enjoyable because your fingers won't be hurting. So I'm going to start at the top of the first stem, and I'm going to make one relatively long stitch from the top to the bottom of the stem. Then I'm going to go back to the middle of the stem and make a tiny couch anchor stitch. This is going to help me achieve the curve in the stem, but it's still going to look like one elongated stitch. I prefer doing stitches like this because I find that back stitches, when you do lots of them in a row to complete a curved line, it can look kind of broken, doesn't really look very realistic. So I prefer doing maybe 4 to 5 anchor stitches on a long stitch like this to make it curve in the way that you want it to and to make it look like a cohesive stem. You might find that you only actually need 2 or 3 anchor stitches to make your stem look the way you want it to. Once I'm done stitching the stem, it's time for me to move on to the leaves. On this first stem, I've only drawn 2 leaves, and for these leaves we're going to be using the satin stitch, and I'm going to be doing about 6 to 7 7, maybe even 8 satin stitches for each of the leaves. I like it when the leaves stand out a little bit and they look a little bit puffy in 3D. So we want to fill up these shapes with a satin stitch and make sure that they actually resemble like a leaf shape, if that makes sense. I like to start at the apex of the leaf and stitch down towards the stem at the base of the leaf. And yeah, I just repeat this 7 to 8 times until I'm happy with the shape of the leaf. I'm going to repeat this process for the other leaf, and then I'm going to move on to the stem for the flower just below this one. Again, I'm just doing one long initial stitch and couching that to make it curve in the way that I want it to. And I'll just be repeating the same satin stitches for the leaves on this stem. But on this stem, I actually have 3 leaves instead of 2. So don't forget, if you want to recreate this design exactly how I have done it here, I do 3 leaves for the roses and 2 leaves for the daisy flowers. So as I finish up the second flower, I'm realizing that I have used all of my green thread and it's time to secure this thread, tie it off, and then rethread my needle with some more green thread. So I'm going to show you exactly how I tie off and secure my thread along the back side of the embroidery. I like to loop my needle among the back stitches that you can't see. I like to do this 2 or 3 times, and then I do it 2 or 3 times more, but I create knots in those stitches. This is a super foolproof method to make sure that your embroidery lasts for a super long time. I use this method in all of my shoe embroidery projects, and I never ever have stitches coming loose, so definitely would recommend this method. So I've just gone ahead and stitched the other stems and leaves off camera, and now we're going to move on to the flower portion of this embroidery project. First of all, I'm going to show you how to stitch these roses, and I'm using a technique here called the woven wheel stitch. I think some people call it different things like the rose stitch. I learned it as the woven wheel stitch, and basically you're going to stitch 5 straight stitches from the center of the circle we marked out earlier, kind of like hands on a clock pointing to 12, 3, 5, 7, and 9. And once you're done stitching these spokes of the wheel, you're going to insert your needle back up through the fabric, and you're going to start weaving your needle among these stitches. I like to think of it as you stitch it under one of the stitches, skip the next one, stitch it under the next stitch, and it creates this amazing woven stitch that really resembles a rose and rose petals. I absolutely love it. This is one of my favorite stitches. It is slightly more advanced, but I wouldn't say it's as difficult as perfecting French knots, so I would definitely still consider this a super beginner friendly tutorial. The key to a perfect woven wheel stitch or rose stitch is to make sure you're not pulling the thread too taut when you're weaving it through the different stitches. The thread should just be kind of sitting on top, and that's how it creates the perfect rose texture. You do still want it to be secure, but you shouldn't be yanking on that thread. It's not going to create a really nice pattern if it's super tight. That's one of the mistakes I see a lot of beginners making the most. This stitch is the most time consuming of this embroidery tutorial, but you only have to do 2 roses, so I think you could still complete this tutorial in an afternoon. Once you're done weaving your thread through the spokes of the wheel, it's time to secure that stitch, and all you need to do is stick your needle back into the fabric of the jeans and tie off and secure your thread as I showed you before. Once you're done stitching your roses, it's time to go in and stitch some daisies. I'm going to be using this white thread. Again, remember, for all of the stitches I'm showing you in this video, I'm using 3 strands of embroidery thread for the thickness, and this is where I go back in and add petals into the design that I sketched out earlier. I love this embroidery marker. It gives you so much freedom with the design. To stitch these daisies, we're going to be doing more of the satin stitch, so the same stitch that we use on the leaves on the stems, and we're just going to be filling up these daisy petals in exactly the same way that we filled up the leaves. We want them to be a little bit 3D, a little bit puffy, and we want them to connect in the middle where the pollen for the flower would be. I think I do 8 to 10 stitches for each of these daisy petals. Don't be afraid to make them really plump, really full. I absolutely love it when my petals look a little bit 3D, so don't be afraid to do that. Once you're done stitching the daisy petals, it's time to add the pollen, and to do this we're going to be doing one small French knot stitch in the center of both of the daisy flowers. This is our last stitch of the day and it is one of my favorites. So to complete this French knot stitch, I'm using 3 strands of that yellow thread, and I'm going to wrap it around my needle twice to achieve the thickness that I want for this French knot. If you want a thicker French knot or a thinner French knot, all you have to do is adjust the number of times you wrap the thread around the needle. Make sure you control the thread as you are stitching French knots. Finish up the other 2 flowers if you haven't already, and then what we're going to do is use some water to remove the remaining blue marker on the jeans. As you can see, a lot of the blue marker is covered with the embroidery that we just did, but there are some remnants, especially around the daisy petals. So I'm going to take this small little spray bottle, it just has water in it, and I'm going to spritz it all over the design. This is going to make the blue marker disappear since it is a disappearing embroidery marker, and I'm going to leave the jeans to dry for a little bit. Don't be afraid if it doesn't disappear right away. It can take 2 to 3 to 4 tries spritzing it and letting it dry for the marker to completely disappear. And once your jeans are dry, you should be left with a little something like this. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that it's giving you the spring vibes that it's giving me. I'll be posting a couple more tutorials this week, and if you do enjoy my tutorials, you enjoy my content, I would absolutely love it if you'd consider subscribing to my channel and potentially leaving a like and a comment on this video. I do take requests for tutorials, so if you have something you're really dying to see, please let me know in the comments. I'll be doing some more polls on my channel to see what exactly you guys want me to embroider next, so don't miss those. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this video, especially if you've gotten to the end. I will see you guys in my next video.